Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So continuing on now, after our short interim, with the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salam now returned back to Egypt, back to Yusuf, with their final brother, with the one that historically is referred to as Benjamin or Binyamin. Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَلَمَّا دَخَلُوا عَلَى Yusuf. Once they re-entered upon Yusuf, into the presence of Yusuf, آوَى إِلَيْهِ أَخَاهُ. He embraced his brother, that brother, full brother, the only one who didn't betray him. He embraced his brother, and he said to him, أَنَا أَخُوك. I'm your brother, it's me, Yusuf. أَنَا أَخُوك. فَلَا تَبْتَئِسْ بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. And so do not be despairing or saddened or grievous about what they used to do or by what they used to do to you. So this is the reunion, a long-awaited reunion with his brother, and it also indicates that he was still under a great deal of disrespect, great deal of hurt, a great deal of chastisement from the rest of the brothers. But some lessons here, or reflections. The first of them, the scholars point out that when Yusuf alayhi salam finally went into private quarters, basically, with his brother. I mean, some of the Mufassirun said that they were 11, Yusuf was the 12th, alayhi salam. And so how he did it was that he said, okay, every two of you to a room. He's a very gracious host. Every two of you to a room. Then there would be one left over, which is his brother. And then he said, okay, I'll be with him. Fine, he's all alone, I'll take care of him myself, just so he doesn't feel like he is getting the short end of the stick. So that was perfectly planned by him. And then once he was in private with him, آوَى إِلَيْهِ أَخَاهُ. He brought his brother to him. The word awa could not have been, of course it can't, it's Qur'an, but I want you to notice how it was the most perfect word. Because the word awa, the Qur'an speaks about ma'wa, the Jannah being al-ma'wa, which is the place of resting, the place of repose. The most gracious host will house you there. It's called the ma'wa, the place of comfort. And that is one of many meanings of ma'wa. Ma'wa also means to be embraced physically. Not just to be hosted, like taken in by your host, to be hosted physically, to be embraced. It also means the word hugging. It also means someone rushes to you in sympathy, like someone sympathizes with you, means just comes to you and says, how can I make things better? Awa ilay. The Arabs would use it like that. The word awa, they said, also means, this is just so profound, it is the term in Arabic that is used when birds of a feather flock together. Like imagine a whole bunch of scattered birds that are all over the place looking for each other, and all of a sudden they call it dovetail, right? They come together and they finally align and proceed onward together. And here are the brothers coming back together, right? And they said the word awa also infers healing. Like the wound, like when you get gashed, you get a cut, and the two sides of the skin start closing up. They use the word awal jurh, that the wound, the injury is closed up. And every single one of those applies to what just happened here with Yusuf alayhi salam and his brother. This is not just a perfect word choice, because sometimes people can express things in such a beautiful way, such a perfect way, in a sense. But the Qur'an chose the perfect word for every single phrase and statement and word and term in the whole Qur'an. That is what is supernatural about the Qur'an. The Arab, for example, who are just so mastering of the skill of articulation of language, they had a tradition called the naqd tradition. That is literary critique. They were brutal. They would go to the most celebrated, the most eloquent poems of each other, and poke holes in them. Say, yeah, it is pretty good, but that word should have been that, and that word in this context should have been a better, here's an even better word. So that's what they would do. These Arabs who thrived on this brutal tradition of one-upping each other could not identify a single term in the whole Qur'an that could be improved on. All of them, the whole generation, could not find a single word in 114 surahs. There is no record of this whatsoever. Never happened. And so appreciate that. And the word awa, I think, is a beautiful opportunity for us to notice that. Once you realize all of its meanings, you go back to the lexicons and dictionaries, and then you think of what just happened with Yusuf and his brother. Couldn't have been said in any better way. No better term could carry that combination of inferences, like the word awa. And then another lesson here is that he did it immediately. He immediately broke it to his brother, or disclosed to his brother, it's me, I'm your brother. And this is something we should all do. At the first available opportunity, relieve your loved ones of wondering, are you okay? Are you alive? Are things better or not? Don't put them through that. As soon as you can, connect with them, update them, pick up the phone, visit. Don't leave it in limbo. Don't leave the unknowns to scorch their hearts. Even between spouses, one example I think of is that when a husband and a wife are, having a tense moment in their relationship, and then news of that trickles to the in-laws, aside from it get escalating, but the in-laws at the very least are boiling inside because that's my baby. Each of them is thinking about, the husband and the wife, that's my baby being hurt right now, it's in pain right now. So many times, because the husband and wife are in the house together, they, basically reconcile and things move on, and the parents never get the memo. And so they're still boiling, they're still burning, they're still grieving, even though the most direct parties involved are like past this. So don't do that. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anh actually said that to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Aisha. Last time he spoke to them, they were fighting. Abu Bakr tried to discipline Aisha for, how dare you speak to the Messenger of Allah like this, raise your voice like this. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him to leave. And then later on, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, I'm not saying that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did anything wrong or Aisha did anything wrong, and this was said in good spirits, in a light-hearted way. But the statement itself is gold, and we should all think of it regarding our relationships with our in-laws. He said, the statement was, when he entered and saw you guys are better now, he said, won't you admit me upon your peace the same way you admitted me upon your war? Like, you guys were at war and you involved me, so why don't you guys involve me when you had the truce? And so Yusuf alayhi salam jumped on it right away and told him, I'm your brother, at the first available moment. Also, he said to him, Inna ana akhuk, I'm your brother, fala tabta'is, and so don't be saddened. This could be understood in a sense like, I'm going to protect you now, but it could also be in a sense that Allah will protect you the same way He protected me. I mean, it's me, it's Yusuf, it's the one they tried to kill. It didn't work. Allah saved me. He'll save you too. Survivor stories are so important. And these are, of course, an extension of community. The community is so important so that we don't have to grieve alone, so that we don't have to think we're the only person going through our problems. Seeing people with similar struggles helps us. It's just human nature. That's why Al-Khansa, she used to say, وَلَوْلَا بُكَاءُ النَّاسُ حَوْلِي لَقَتَلْتُ نَفْسِي. Were it not for the fact that everybody is crying around me, I would have killed myself. She's saying this, that I'm not the only person that lost the person in this battle or in this tragic incident. Likewise, grieving alone, of course, celebrating alone is also very burdensome on the heart emotionally. But he's telling him, I'm like you. I made it, so you're going to make it too. That is part of our human nature, that we want to see people who go through what we go through and have done well. And so I can do well as well. And then the next ayah goes on to say, فَلَمَّا جَهَّزَهُمْ بِجَهَازِهِمْ, and then when he provided them with their belongings, their provisions, he loaded them up again with goods, right? They come to Egypt to purchase goods. So when he loaded them up again with their goods, جَعَلَ السِّقَايَةَ فِي رَحْلِ أَخِيهِ, he placed the siqaya, the siqaya from saqa, right, to give someone to drink. The siqaya is the drinking cup, in his brother's saddlebag, fi rahli akhi, in his brother Benjamin. I'm gonna call him Benjamin, even though it's not confirmed. Okay, in Benjamin's saddlebag. So he put it there. ثم أذن مؤذن, and then an announcer called out, أيتها العير إنكم لسارقون. O caravan, you are thieves. And there's a whole lot of eloquence in this, but even before the eloquence, just realize that Yusuf alayhi salam now is employing a very deliberate plan to get his way with his brothers. And no matter how burnt out you are by your enemies in life, patience and deliberation and forbearance are the way to get your best interests secured in this world and the next. You know, I'm not promoting violence or hostility or anything, but just, you know, like, patience works. Al-Ahnaf ibn Qais, rahimahullah, it was said about him that a man came up to him. This man was like a nobleman, Al-Ahnaf ibn Qais, and he slapped him across the face. And so Al-Ahnaf was shocked, like this Bedouin man, this out-of-towner just came in and slapped him out of nowhere across the face. So he grabbed his face and he said, Bismillah, like whoa, right? Good Muslims react by remembering Allah, right? He said, Bismillah. And then he told him, what in the world are you doing? He said, I wanted the people to know that I slapped Sayyidul Arab, the chief of the Arabs, the number one, big shot. I slapped him. So Al-Ahnaf ibn Qais was really known for his hilm. He was very forbearant. He was very good at restraining his emotions. And so he said, I am not Sayyidul Arab. That is Sayyidul Arab. That's the chief of the Arabs. And he pointed at another guy, basically across the street, a guy with a very hot temper. And so the Bedouin's like, oh yeah, he'll get some too. And he goes over to the guy and he slaps him across the face. So the guy quickly grabs his hand, takes out his sword and cuts off his arm. Sorry, I should have done, like, you know, trigger warning or something. And so Al-Ahnaf is looking onto this scene, and then he says, Ana wallahi qata'tuha. By Allah, I'm the one who cut off his hand. Meaning what? Meaning by my restraint that enabled me to deploy my revenge. I'm not saying be vengeful. I'm not saying, you know, you should be inclined to revenge. But that is the very idea, that, you know, you're not a punching bag for not being reactionary. No, just be well thought out, you know, in how you protect yourself for the future and how you get justice served, all of that stuff. Patience, patience, patience. Do not be a compulsive creature. Let your intellect rein in your passions and find the right balance. And so Yusuf alayhi salam did that. He said, okay, I'm going to do this plan. I'm going to take the drinking cup of the king. It belongs to the king. And I'm going to put it inside the saddlebag. And then after they leave, that's why I said, oh, caravan, because they already got back together, regrouped, got on their camels, started leaving. Then they called them back. أَيَّتُهَا الْعِيرُ إِنَّكُمْ لَسَارِقُونَ. Oh, caravan, you are thieves. You guys are stealing. And there's so much to be said here. The scholar said Yusuf alayhi salam, from his great deliberation, he was able to, number one, effect his plan, and number two, not fall into any sort of haram with it. Because you think, like, first of all, as you know the story, how it's going to unfold, this is going to get pulled out of his brother's bag. That's going to be like terrifying, unless his brother knew. They say he must have told his brother. And you know from the previous verse, they went off into private, so he probably did tell him, I'm about to do this ploy to get you to stay with me and protect you. You know, another thing is, they said, well, how did he call them thieves? Wouldn't that be haram? Wouldn't that be lying? Because, you know, he's the one who put it in the bag, so it's not really true. They're not thieves. He said, well, Yusuf alayhi salam must have tiptoed out of this. You know, it wasn't haram, because either, number one, they actually are thieves because they stole Yusuf alayhi salam from his father a long time ago, or another way to explain it is that the announcer didn't know Yusuf alayhi salam's plan, so he thought they were thieves, and that's it. He said, you are thieves. the king's cup is missing, and he didn't realize that Yusuf alayhi salam is the one that put it in there. And then the verses continue. قالوا وأقبلوا عليه ماذا تفقدون. They approached it, turned back, because you're confident. Confident people don't shy away from the the questions, the tough questions, because they know they have nothing to hide. So they're walking right up to them saying, "What are you missing? What are you missing?" So they said, "نفقد صواع الملك." We are missing the king's goblet, or the measuring cup of the king. The king gave his measuring cup and said, use this basically to measure out the rations for people during this famine. So Yusuf alayhi salam was using that cup. It's called a suwa' from sa'. Sa' is, volume of measurement. We're missing the suwa', the measuring cup that belongs to the king. This is going to be a little bit challenging to explain, but there are 2 times in this surah when siqaya is mentioned, giving drink. When he was in the prison, the man said, I saw in my dream that I am giving drink to my master, right? And a'siru khamra, I'm squeezing, pressing grapes, making wine. So Yusuf alayhi salam said, that means you're going to survive. You're going to give drink to your master. You're going to get rehired by the king to be his butler once again. And here, again, there is the drinking utensil of the king is also going to be the survival of his brother. The rescue of his brother is going to be through the cup of the king. And that is very interesting. Why? Because it was called siqaya, the drinking cup of the king, when it was placed by Yusuf in his brother's bag, because it was gonna save his brother's life. But then when it was his brothers now that are talking about what's missing and what are we looking for, he didn't tell them you're looking for a drinking cup. He says we're looking for the measuring cup. It's the same cup, but the word drinking, which is symbolic of survival, because water is source of life and drinking is nourishment and all that stuff, doesn't apply to them. This measuring is transactional, and it is also involves lots of cheating. Lots of cheating happens in measuring. Waylun al-mutaffifin. That whole surah came down about this issue. The people that have shifty hands, they shortchange others. They have double standards in their measuring. إذا اكتالوا على الناس يستوفون وإذا كالوهم أو وزنوهم يخسرون. Double dealings in their measurements. So it is very interesting that in this set of verses, the same cup is called a siqaya when it is being inserted in the bag to rescue the brother. But then when it is about to be a reason for the brothers to be in a predicament, it's no longer called a source of drinking, it's called a measuring cup, though it's the same cup. Anyway, that's a reflection some of the scholars gave. I hope I did it justice in English. And so they said, we're missing the cup of the king. نفقد صواع الملك ولمن جاء به حمل بعير وأنا به زعيم. And whoever brings it forward, I'll give them an extra camel load. I'll give them a monetary reward, which is allowed, by the way, in our Sharia, the Sharia of the Prophet ﷺ. You can give someone a monetary reward or even a wage. It doesn't just have to be, like salaries basically, and wages based on task. So long as the wager is known, I'm not going to say, I'll give you something if you do this work for me. That would lead to disputes, and the Sharia doesn't allow that. But like prize, awards, salaries, wages, these things are halal. Even in some cases in competitions as well. So we're going to give a whole camel load, and I guarantee that whoever pulls this cup out gets the goblet of the king back for us. قالوا تالله لقد علمتم ما جئنا لنفسد في الأرض وما كنا سارقين. They said, by Allah, we swear by Allah, we did not, by Allah, you know that we did not come to corrupt the earth and we did not steal. How do you know? Because we came back the first time when you put the stuff back in our bags, we came back to pay. You know from our track record. They're referring to their track record, as people should, And so they returned to Egypt to pay for the first load, And also Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhum, the Sahaba, he said at this ayah, they were also particularly known even among the masses, the laymen in the streets of Egypt, to be very honest people, because when they got to the gates of Egypt, the borders of Egypt, they fastened the ropes or straps on the mouths of their camels, so their camels wouldn't just, like bend down and pick up any foods that are not rightfully theirs from the people of Egypt, from the marketplaces, from the vegetables, from the fruits, from the pastures. And so we brought the money back. We're not corrupt. And you also saw what we did. We strapped our camels to be extra vigilant about not taking anything without due right. And they swore, we swear by Allah that that we are honest people. There is also a fiqhi, a legal element here, which is, and this is controversial, but many of the Sahaba believe this, that it is permissible to swear when you believe that something is very likely, preponderant, ghalabatul dhann. You're almost sure about it, even if you're not absolutely sure about it. You can swear upon something so long as you believe there's a very high likelihood that it's true, even if you're not absolutely certain that it's true. قالوا فما جزاؤه إن كنتم كاذبين. So they were told, what will the punishment be if you are lying? What will be his punishment? The punishment of the person that stole it, who took the cup of the king. قالوا جزاؤه من وجد في رحله فهو أي هو نفسه جزاؤه. They said, whoever his punishment, whoever you find the measuring cup of the king in his luggage, then he himself is the punishment. Meaning what? Meaning that he himself becoming your property is the punishment. So the thief gets taken into slavery for being a thief. كَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الظَّالِمِينَ. This is how we repay criminals. This is how we repay criminals. So this was part of the genius, well thought out, methodical plan of Yusuf alayhi salam. According in Egyptian law, like historians, they say that at the time in Egyptian law, a thief, when he's caught stealing, he gets beat up and he has to repay it. And so that's not going to be good. That's not what Yusuf alayhi salam wants to happen to his brother. But in their law, in the law of the Israelites, the Canaanites, Canaan, right? Their law was different, that when someone is stolen, he becomes the property of the one he stole from. And so Yusuf alayhi salam, from his genius, is that he relegated them to their law, because their law, referring them to their own law, they don't know this, is what would be in his interest, which is what would secure for him to take his brother. And so keep in mind, he didn't accuse them, Yusuf alayhi salam himself didn't accuse them of stealing whatsoever. And even if he would have told this announcer to accuse them of stealing, it still wouldn't have been wrong, because they stole Yusuf alayhi salam. And if he would have taken his brother by force, it would have looked wrong. No one knows the real story, and it would have also disclosed his identity. And so he couldn't take it by force, he had to take it by law. But whose law? It had to be their law. And so he asked them, hey, what do you think a fair punishment is for someone who steals it? And they said, fair is fair. The way we see fair, كَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الظَّالِمِينَ, is how we repay them. We refer to our law. Our law is that they become the slave of the person they stole from. They become his property. And so he was able to secure, set up the investigation before they opened up the luggage in that very way, and basically win before it even started, win the fight before it started. Referring people to their own value system is something even the Prophet ﷺ did, and it is a very useful tool in negotiation, and it's called ilzam, right? Holding a person to their own standards, even if you don't believe in them. And of course, if you do, then you do. That's even better. But the example would be that when the Prophet ﷺ was commanded by Allah, أَنذِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ, warn your nearest relatives, he stood up on Mount Safa. This is Sahih Bukhari from Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma. He stood up on Mount Safa and he said to his people, if I were to tell you that there was a cavalry back there, an army of horses, about to raid Mecca, would you believe me? And so they said, ما جربنا عليك كذبا. We've never experienced a single lie from you. ما جربنا عليك إلا صدقا. We've never experienced anything but truth from you. He said, then in that case, after he said it's a setup, right? After you admit this, that it is so, فإني نذير لكم بين يدي عذاب شديد, then you need to know that I am telling you, the person you've never seen lie, he's telling you that I am a warner from God before the coming of a painful punishment. And so all the time, this is a great technique to have people arrive at where you want them to be in a necessary conversation. You know, it's not healthy to corner people in conversations, but when you need to convince someone of something, hold them to their own words. Hold them to their own words and pressure them based on their own words and their own, reactions. And there are so many examples of this, but basically, when people try to argue in da'wah with me, I ask them, what is your rubric? What is your metric for a true prophet, for a true religion? What would convince you that this is a true book from God, that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam was a true prophet from God? If they tell me, something reasonable, I'll give them the proofs, because all of our proofs cover, every sector of reasonability in our deen, right? And if they say something like, God would have to come to me, or no matter what happens, I will not believe, then in that case, I can just save my breath and move on to someone who is receptive, who is being reasonable and wants to listen to the proofs. So you hold them to their own value system before you go on and you try to impose something that to begin with they may not concede to. So those are some scattered lessons and inshallah points of benefit we can take from the surah, or this passage in the surah. Next week inshallah we will cover Yusuf alayhi salam having his agents, his workers, open up the luggage and what will transpire from there, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakallah khairan. Please do remember the masjid in your donations if the button is there. If it's not, you can find the link on our website. And may Allah Azza wa Jal continue to bless us and you with being near to His book and finding time to study His words and try to draw closer to Him by His speech and His message. Allahumma ameen. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum.